Back on the pod.
Back.
Been a minute. This is I'm excited for this one because I was listening. We had a guy called Mark Wales. He's a former SAS soldier. He's coming on the pod. We're literally just about to do a Zoom with him. Dude, this guy's story. I was reading his book, Survivor in the SAS. Some of it's insane. Well, actually, it's all insane. But right at the very start of the book, he talks about, and I was telling you this, he wore 2 grenades while in I'll preface it a little bit. He has been in the SAS for 10 deployments, did some East Timor, 4 years, 4 deployments in Afghanistan, worked the war there, and then he sort of come out of, after leaving the military, he did a Ivy League business degree and started his clothing brand. He's doing speaking, wrote his book. But he wanted to be in the military from 14. And this is one of the things that I think it'll be interesting to talk to him about is why. Because there's so much that I'm actually excited to talk about.
Yeah.
I'm probably just going to be so scattered in the conversation because I'm so keen.
He's done a lot from what
Yeah.
what he talks about in his book. He's been through a lot of shit. And it's like, there's enough there to write 7 movies about it. Like, it's the stuff you watch, you don't know, does this shit really happen?
Yeah. From listening to the Bear Grylls, the David Goggins, and the Jocko Willits, like the typical ones. but reading the book, it's sort of like, well, yeah, maybe. I don't know. But that puts him there in my mind. But he had 2 grenades on his chest as like his everyday wear, and one of them was to hit the enemy with, throw it at them, and then the other one was for him. And I believe that's if he ever got captured, to detonate yourself so that you're not giving away information. I assume.
Yeah, dude, it's better off not being here than being tortured by...
imagine accepting that. Oh. That's a crazy acceptance.
I don't know, wasn't it that all Russian spies used to have that, some kind of a little capsule full of some... What do they used to use?
Oh, there's
arsenic or whatever.
Yeah, arsenide, I think it is. Which they just quickly have a tablet of.
That's it, yeah. I'm not giving you anything. That's just... I'm accepting that I'm out.
Yeah. So then there was that. But obviously at the moment we've got Russia and Ukraine going on. So it'll be super interesting to know his thoughts about that.
If he has any, maybe.
He might not. So yeah, that'll be something worth asking him. And then Ben Robert Smith, who he won a VC in 2010 for there was some invasion where they were ambushed. There was people above people on ground level, and essentially they were fucked. This is in Afghanistan, and he basically just ran astray from everyone else to redirect the bullets at him so that his crew could have a shot at actually taking out the enemy. And he never got hit, I don't believe, and managed to kill 2 other Afghanis. So that won him the VC, the Victoria Cross. But he's currently in the news for war crimes. So it'd be interesting to know, because it sounds like he had some involvement or knowledge with him. Is there anything else you're wanting to ask, get to know?
I just want to know what it's like coming back to everyday life after 10 deployments and how he sees the world, and does he look around if only you guys knew what was going on, or
that'd be it.
Is it more obviously they don't know, how would they know? They haven't been where I've been, it doesn't get the exposure it needs. I'm curious as to does he think
I reckon he'll view us as
more?
idiots, like complete idiots, like we just check Facebook and that's our news for the day.
Yeah, but it's I wonder because maybe not. Maybe I completely understand why a lot of people don't know, but they should. Yeah. I wonder what the take is. That's what I want to know.
Damn, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, what his...
We're probably idiots. You fucking melons.
Which is completely fair. Completely fair. We don't know.
1,000%. Oh. And just hearing about how at 14 you sort of already knew that you wanted to start in the military and go to the SAS.
I was pretty lucky, I guess, to see something that I wanted to do at that age. And from that point on, I wanted to join the military. So it kind of kept me on the straight and narrow for a bit. Kept me away from the drugs and, all the usual shit you can get yourself involved in when you're a young male.
Of course.
It gave me a good, I guess, target to aim at. And, by the time I was 17, I was off to the Defence Academy. And, went to the military, and it took a few more years, but I eventually got to the selection course for SAS and gave it my best shot.
That's insane. Were you much of an athlete in school?
I was a bit more of a nerd, but eventually I did get more into athletics. I had like my family, my mum was an athletic type, so I had a bit of her natural knack for, some sports. And over time, once I started training for the military, I started to build myself into a soldier. Like I got a stronger physique and got a bit fitter and a bit stronger. And over the years, that made a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess so from 14 was the first call you made. What was the story? You called up someone in the military and said, "I want to be in the SAS."
I got the phone book out because that's all we had back then. Got the phone book, looked for Campbell Barracks, Swanbourne, and called the phone number that was there on the landline. And I went through to the guard room, and I was like, "Hey," they're like, "Who is this?" I'm like, "I'm Mark." And they go, "What do you want?" I go, "Well, I'm a high school student. I want to join the SAS." He's like, "Well, don't talk to us. You got to go talk to the recruiting center." I'm like, "Okay, how hard is it to get in?" They're like, "Well, we don't know." Like, well, you guys are fucking useless.
God, yeah. No help there.
And one guy said, "If you don't tell me who you are, I'm going to call the police." So that was pretty funny. But
Wow.
that was a security badge. This is all pre-September 11, so it was pretty relaxed back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, later on, it's a bit better now. You got access to a whole bunch of shit and people that if you want to get into the regiment, you can talk to different people and find content online, I'm sure.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, for the Defence Force, I see all their ads over YouTube, on the TV as well. It's very easy to come by.
Oh yeah.
But prior to selection for the SAS as well, was it 6 years of training and preparation? What was the lead up like?
So I did 4 years training. That was ADFA and Duntroon. And then I went to the 2nd Battalion, which is an infantry unit, and it's a light infantry unit. So I knew that'd be good grounding to go to SAS. And when I was at Turaya, I was lucky because we got deployed to East Timor because the Interfet peacekeeping mission there had started. And so we were, I think, the 3rd rotation there. And that was a great introduction to operations. And I think I learned more in that 6-month tour than you normally learn in, 3 or 4 years in a battalion just doing normal stuff. So it was a great training round. It was a great chance to, I guess, be a platoon commander. And then I guess 3 years after being an infantry soldier, I got the chance to go to SAS, and I applied and did the selection kind of precursor, which is I think they called it SVETs back then. It's like a 2-day entry course. And then after that, I got the thumbs up to go on the selection course. So in late 2004, I trained up and walked on the selection course. I think I was about 24 years old and was only a baby.
That 2-day course, that XFEDS, was that difficult, or was the actual selection course?
That one wasn't crazy hard. I think it was like a 20K march and a fitness test, and it had to do a shoot and a few other things. So it wasn't too bad. But the selection course was the toughie, obviously.
I want to hear about that. But actually, it just popped into my mind that, and I'm guessing this was prior to that, you dropped a grenade in training.
Yes, I did.
What's the story there? Can you tell that?
It was pretty funny. I was on
I love that.
When you're an early officer, you become a range officer. So you got to get trained in all the different weapons. And we'd already done hand grenades, but you have to supervise your mate throwing grenades just to get the qualification. And anyway, me and my mate, we got the last few grenades of the day and went out to the pit to throw them. And I think I was throwing the last grenade, and I pulled the pin and threw it. And the lever caught my hand, and the grenade fell like right in front of me on a wood beam. And I was like, shit. And I knew I had about 4 seconds, right? Which doesn't sound like long, but when you're panicking, 4 seconds is a bloody lifetime. So we both ran out of there and hit the ground and managed to get away without too much injury, just a bruised ego.
God damn. Damn, I guess everyone will be talking about that at base.
Oh, everyone loved that. Everyone loved me screwing up my grenade throw.
And is it, I mean, this might be a calm head talking about it. Is it possible to pick the grenade back up and lob it away? Is that...
You can if you want. You can if you want. It's pretty ballsy.
Yeah.
You might be minus an arm for a bit, but you've got, I mean, shit. I mean, if you're in combat, you probably end up doing it, but ideally you don't touch them because they could go off at any moment.
Okay. Okay, so you're not 100% on the
risky.
4-second theory. It's not like
Nah.
a piece of cheese
By
you
the time
drop.
you bend over and fumble it and try and throw it, you're probably blowing yourself up anyway.
Yes. I guess you'd avoid that.
Yeah, stay away
God
from
damn.
that.
And then so the selection. How did that unfold? How many people are applying as well?
So I think there was about 100 the year I did selection, and I was candidate 87. I remember that you have your number written down, and that's what they call you, like candidate 87. But yeah, I remember just going out there going, this is going to be, hell on earth, but you just got to make sure. I made a kind of deal with myself. I'm like, don't give up. You've got to let them take you off the course. You can't take yourself off. And I think that was an important contract I made because so many people don't get removed from the course. They take themselves off because they think they're doing bad. And it's true. You always feel like you're screwing it up the whole time, and you probably are. But the trick is, can you keep going when you're having those bad moments? And I think the best soldiers and the best business people and the best athletes, they just keep going. Even when things aren't going well, they just keep executing, keep learning, and, stay on your feet. And at least then you're in the game still. If you give up, you're out of the game.
That's such an important message for anyone listening. Just stay in the game, even though...
Stay in it.
Yeah, do whatever you can.
And don't get me wrong, there's always like, giving to, I think Churchill called it convictions of good sense, but there is a time when you should quit, right? It shouldn't be blood and guts the whole way. If it's clearly the wrong thing and you realize that, then give it up. But if you've made your mind up and you're keen on it and then nothing changes, then you should stay in there.
At what point do you reckon does that tipping point occur? Because it's very easy to go, actually, like, my shoulder's been aching since day one. And maybe your shoulder is like obliterated, but that head noise of like giving yourself that out could be.
Yeah.
How do
you've got to make these rules and contracts with yourself before the trouble starts. So when it's quiet and you're comfortable, you got to sit there and go, it's still a good mission. It's still a good reason to want to go there. I know I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to get badly hurt. I got injured terribly halfway through the course. But just because it's hard, it doesn't mean you throw away the years of hard work and thinking and training and just on a whim because you feel bad or you're in pain or you're scared. You don't give up. You've got to think about what your goal was when you started. And if it's still relevant, then you keep going.
Yeah. What were you hearing as well or expecting prior to going into this selection course? I'm sure you'd spoken with other SAS officers at that point.
Yeah, I think self-awareness is so important, like understanding what your body's telling you, what your mind is telling you. Sometimes it's trying to trick you. It's trying to tell you, no, you shouldn't be doing this. And you've got to know when to ignore it and when to listen to it. And I think I was really good when I was training, I was really good at not overtraining. I worked hard and I made sure that rest was a critical part of my training. I didn't overdo the training. I'd work really hard on my weaknesses, especially, and then I'd get my rest.
What were your weaknesses, would you say?
Mine was endurance. So anything like pack marching, long runs, fast runs, anything like that. Because of my frame, I'm a big dude. That was the thing I was always going to find hardest. It was never going to be strength. I'm a big. My mum was a farmer. She was a big battle axe, so I've got my mum's frame. But all the endurance stuff, people kept telling me too when I was young, they're like, you won't pass because they only take, whippets and guys that are good at endurance. I'm like, well, fuck, let them decide that, not me. Damn. So I think that's another lesson. Like all these narratives formed by people who have no fucking idea what they're talking about. So don't listen to them. Do what you think's right, and let them decide.
So then day one starts of SAS selection. It's already been probably difficult making it to the, or giving yourself the opportunity to be in this situation where you can be selected of those 100 men. Day one starts. What are you going through?
So on day one, I mean, I remember getting there, and the funny thing about something as big as selection, or even a sports event or a political campaign, a lot of the battle is fought before you even get there, and it's fought in the preparation and in the quiet moments before it, and the years and years and years of thinking about it or working on it, so that by the time you get there, you can change your chance of success dramatically depending on how much you prepare for it. And I think that's a bloody important insight, because you can do something that normally the odds of achieving it would be really remote, but you can shift the odds in your favor by really rigorous preparation and a really good mindset. You can do that over years. And I did it once when I was young, when I got into ADFA, because I put the work in, I got my grades, I did my fitness, and then I got in. I was like, holy shit, if I do that for every step of the way, I might be able to get where I want to go. And I've taken that mindset with me all through life, whether it was trying to get into business school, which was really tough, or trying to get into McKinsey, which is also really tough. I applied that same framework of make sure you have the odds in your favor, and you can do that with really good preparation.
So the battle, you've already set the stage by the time you get to day one of selection.
Pretty much as ready as you can be, right? You get a training program before you go on. So you do that stuff because that's the physical stuff. But the important thing about selection is all the mental stuff. And it really is probably, I'd say it's 95% mental, because within about 3 or 4 or 5 days, pretty much the playing field is level. Everyone's buggered, and it now depends on how much you want to be there and what your mindset's like and what your self-care is like. So keeping that mindset of knowing what you want to achieve and trying to take care of yourself, you got to work hard, but you also can't burn yourself out. Doing those things is bloody important, and just staying in it, even when it's hard. You got those moments when you're having a down moment, you've just got to talk yourself through it and keep going. That's the hardest bit. The physical stuff is hard. It's always going to be hard, but you can train yourself for that. It's the other moments, the psychological difficulties that are hardest.
How are you getting yourself through psychologically when it is so tricky? Is there something you're telling yourself, reminding yourself of?
Yep. I'd just say, look, don't give up. Doesn't matter what happens. You're not leaving until they physically arrest you and take you off the course, or you're taken out in an ambulance. So don't quit. And if you do something wrong, which I will, I knew I was going to do a ton of things wrong. Don't freak out. Just stay calm and do better next time. Just learn from it. Do better next time. They were the big ones.
It's so easy to stay calm as well, though. You especially being in the battlefield, you've got real sort of consequences if things don't go well. How are you centering yourself, staying calm?
I think the toughest thing is when you know the pressure's on. For me, when I knew the pressure was on, I try and keep a straight face. Don't show your fear or your emotion, because especially if you're around other people, you're with troops, that's contagious. So don't show anger or fear. Just stay calm, keep your breathing under control. Think about what you want to do, and if it's really spiraling down, then try and stop the spiral. Try and pull everyone out of that downward spiral of everything going wrong. Just go, look, stop. Let's just think about what we're doing. Let's regather, collect ourselves, and keep going on the mission. So I think just keeping your composure and knowing when to pause and take care of people is a big one.
Was there times when you're okay, at this point we just need to sort of press on? How would you determine when's times to press on and when's times to gather composure? And
it's the really tough thing is you're trying to balance a few things. You've got a mission you got to achieve. You've got a team that you're working with that you've got to look after, and you've got to look after yourself as well. So at different points, you've got to apply pressure on each one of those. But for the most part, it should be the mission. You should push people hard to get the mission done. And if you don't know what to do, always keep going on the mission. Always keep working on that. But I always try and prioritize that job first, and then you put your team second, and then you put yourself third.
Damn, that's a leadership mindset. That's leaders eat last or something like that. I think Simon Sinek said.
He does a lot of work with the military, and he's
Really?
impressed by the leadership values that they show. And he articulates it better than military people do. Most military people can't tell you why they've got a good leadership culture, but he watched it and is able to explain why it's such a good leadership culture. And it's because of little values like that. It's like you look after your team first, especially if you're a leader, they get to eat first.
It's so much easier to follow someone when that's the direction they lead with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much harder, and so few people, I think, are capable of being that kind of leader who can do that well.
Well, like, for example, bringing it to today, Ukraine and Russia, Zelensky, I know I've got that name wrong, but Russia's, Ukraine's president or prime minister is out there fighting, and they've got a lot more to fight for than Russia do, but Putin's in a bunker apparently. So it's a lot easier to fight and get around someone who is actually a part of it and rallying with you as well.
Yeah, I think sharing risk is such a big part of leadership, and a lot of bad leaders I've seen in my time are the ones that don't want to do that. They don't want to put themselves in the firing line, and that wasn't so much in the military, it was more in business. It's like, accept responsibility, you're in charge. Like, if you're with a client, then you take the fire, like, for your team. You take the hits for your team, you back them up, and then in private, you fix whatever you need to fix. And you're kind of seeing that in Ukraine at the moment. He's on the ground, he's sharing the risk with everyone. He could flee if he wants to, get out there, no worries at all. But he's not going to. He's going to lead his teams, and that the impact that has on morale is like huge.
I can imagine. Like, it's so much easier to stand by a guy.
Yeah, you want to fight for the guy who's with you there, going through it all. It makes the most sense in the world.
Of course, yeah. Do you have any takes on that, or Australia's involvement with that at the moment?
So this is an interesting one. This is it's a case study in strategy, right? Your objectives to launching something as big as that have got to be really clear. You have to prioritize what you want to hit, because your resources are limited. So you've only got so much time, so much firepower, so much money. You can't hit everything. So you got to choose what you're going to ignore, and you got to choose what you're going to go after. And I think this is where he's faltered. I think they're advancing on 7 different axes, and I don't think they weighted the main effort, which should have been the capital. Like, if you're trying to if you're trying to take over a country, you want to replace the leadership, or whatever it is Russia's trying to do, you would go after the capital and the leadership. But they've run into all sorts of trouble. So I think for me, he's having that focus, and the translation to business and life is like, don't spread yourself too thin. You've only got so much time, so much effort and brain power. Like, just concentrate on a few things, because if you don't, your chance of success are much lower in your chosen field.
Do you think it's an underestimation on the Russians' part that's like led to spreading themselves thin?
I think they've been surprised. I think they've been caught out, and I think the Ukrainians are better armed than they realised. I think if you can negate air power and armour like they're doing, because they've got man-powered weapons that can do that. A single man can carry a Stinger missile or a Javelin. That's a serious issue, because a Javelin can destroy an armoured personnel carrier that carries 8 troops. A Stinger can take down an aircraft that's carrying 18 paratroopers, or a helicopter, or maybe a fixed-wing aircraft. So it's a serious issue, and they're starting to see that now. And the other thing is the spiritual factors, or the intangibles, like motivation, willpower, fear, protecting your loved ones. Ukraine has all that in their favor. Russia doesn't. So
Nothing to lose.
that counts for a lot.
Yeah, a lot harder to beat when you got nothing to lose. Like, Whereas if Russia are worried about budget spending on the war, or they don't want the budget to go over 10% of GDP, we were talking about this today. It's like, if that's a factor and someone's pushing back hard because they got nothing to lose.
Yeah, and how many of the Russian soldiers truly believe in, like, we need to take Ukraine? Like, how many do you think are in that kind of mindset this day and age? Oh, it's hard to say, not being over there, but you wouldn't think it's as many as Putin would like it to be, and then it's not as many Ukrainians who are going to defend their country and have that kind of passion either. So it's
the same.
Such a weird thing.
Doing, yeah, and what they're doing in a lot of ways isn't that much different to what the West has done on a number of occasions in the last 50 or 60 years. We've done the same thing. We've gone to countries thinking we could stabilise them or support an insurgency or topple a government, and it's just ended badly nearly every time. So I think the Russians are learning that now. It's not over. It's still a long way to go, but the motivation of an apparently inferior force going up against a large force, but they have all these spiritual factors in their favour, counts for a lot.
Do you think there'll be a point where Western countries will get involved, or China? I don't know.
Well, they're already involved because they're providing all sorts of aid. If I was a betting man, I'd say there'd be all sorts of Western intelligence forces on the ground, coordinating the resistance, passing intelligence on. I mean, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be doing those sorts of operations, which are probably deniable, which has been talked about in public many times before, to make Russia pay, because it's happened a number of times. It's a proxy way of attacking an opponent, is to go to another third party and use them to harm another opponent. So it's happened, like Russia did it to the US in Vietnam. The US did it to Russia in Afghanistan in the 80s. Russia did it back to us, and Iran did it back to us in Iraq. So, this is how these countries fight each other without having World War III, is they fight these proxy wars.
Interesting.
It's a dirty game.
So here we are thinking we're not involved, and we're already a part of it.
Sorry, say that again.
Well, we're here thinking we're not involved because there's no people on the ground in our eyes, but we're already a part of it. America's a part of it.
Yeah, well, they're already, like the West, the US and other European nations have already offered all sorts of aid, including lethal aid. So the Ukrainians have a lot of support that the Russians aren't enjoying. And so it's going to be interesting. It's kind of hanging in the balance. I'm surprised 6 days in that the Russians haven't secured as many population centers as I thought they would, and they haven't secured air supremacy, which is a really big one, because if you don't have that and you're trying to protect armored columns, it can be really difficult.
So is there a ticking time bomb on securing that, you reckon, or...
yeah. These things are like, there is a half-life on a military invasion like this. There's only so long you can have troops out on a limb. They've penetrated that far into Ukraine, especially in the south, that you're highly exposed, you're highly vulnerable, because all the leading formations are quite armored, they're tough, and they're good fighters. But then you've got this long logistics tail that's quite soft and targetable. And that's what they're going after. They're hitting all the logistics really, really hard, because if you have an armored force that's not backed up with logistics, they're dead in the water.
Wow. How long do you see this going for then? How long could it continue for?
It could go for years. Could go for years and years. The question is, in the immediate term, whether Russia kind of doubles down on going for Kiev, because they've done this before. They did in Chechnya. They were kind of beaten back a bit in the capital of Grozny, and they came back and just annihilated them with thermobaric weapons. And they're brutally pragmatic when it comes to attacking population centers. So you might see that happen. I think it's hard because they're so committed now. They're in so far. Like, how do you back out of this without catastrophic loss of face? Yeah, it's going to be a tough one.
So they've already created enough enemies that just going ham at this point in time won't like the repercussions have already been set with alliances, and is that the case? Is that right?
Well, they've already started the war.
Yeah.
So once you've started it, the thing is, it's you open this Pandora's box, and I think it's a big mistake people make. And it's always, funnily enough, it's always men that make this mistake. We start something and we don't show enough humility about what we can control. And we think, oh, if we start this battle or we do this thing or we do this business, then I'll be able to control the outcomes. But so often, all these other factors come in that you have no control over. And I think that so often people don't understand that. I know if I go and start a battle tomorrow, there's only a handful of things I can control. I can control myself and my immediate team and my immediate environment. That's about it. Everything else is subject to all sorts of different forces that you don't control. And people don't respect that. They think they can do a lot, but often you're only a small part of a big machine once you start a war like that.
Is this something that you, I guess, learnt from being a part of it, or did it take time to realize that or accept?
When I first started to realize this sort of thing was when the first few times I went to Iraq. It was like 2006, and I remember it was the height of the Civil War, and I remember landing in Baghdad and heading to the green zone, and like it was chaos. There must have been a car bomb probably went off once every, 45 minutes to an hour. There was a gun battle on every checkpoint every hour. I saw aircraft, jets flying over Baghdad, having shoulder-fired missiles at them, like throwing flares, trying to get out of the way. Like the biggest superpower in the world had no control over Baghdad.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it. I was like, it kind of rattled my faith, because you grow up, you watch Hollywood movies and you think America can control anything, but they had no control over a city.
Wow.
So it made me think like, wow, like all these superpowers, they can't even control a city. So how do you expect to control a country?
Yeah. Yeah. We've jumped forward a little bit. I want to go back to hearing about the SAS selection period, and then I want to hear about the Green Zone and your time in Iraq and Afghanistan. What exercises are they taking you through? What are the emotions that you're feeling throughout this selection period?
So the selection course was at the start, they did a bunch of what you call standardized tests. There's like a 3.2K run in your battle order. There's a 20-kilometer force march. There's different fitness tests and phobia tests. They put you through tunnels and put you up heights and abseiling. They put you through all these tests that are closely correlated with success in the unit. And the reason they do it in the first week is because they're able to weed people out quickly who aren't going to be suitable for the selection course, because a lot of it has to do with whether you can train and how much of a pain threshold you have for this sort of work. Like, excuse me, a 3.2K run in 15 or 16 minutes, whatever the pass mark is, I can't remember, but it's bloody hard. It's hard to get that, and you have to train hard. And even in training, we weren't always making the time. But they're looking for people that can push themselves really hard for a certain period of time and have that mental capacity and self-discipline to really apply themselves when no one's watching, no one's motivating them. So that was a big one. It's like no one's going to be shouting at you during a 20K force march, but you better make the time or you're fucked. And so that attitude in the unit, you're treated like an adult. Like, we're not going to shout at you. Get the time, otherwise you're out. And that internal motivation, that intrinsic motivation, was so important as a soldier. No one's going to tell you to go and fix your gear or check your equipment or write your battle report. You've got to do it yourself. And so those high levels of accountability and self-discipline and ability to assimilate instructions, they're all things that were assessed in us as candidates. And shit, I wasn't good at all of them. I had holes all over me, but I think I had the fundamentals, right? And that's all they want. They want to know that you're trainable. So they want someone, even if you're a low performer, but you're an extremely hard worker and a fast learner, they'll take you over a high performer who doesn't give a shit.
Interesting. So being trainable is crucial with anything.
Quickness of comprehension, and the ability to assimilate instruction are two really important variables. You'll be told something, and you'll be told it once, and you better fucking listen because they don't repeat themselves. And if they have to repeat themselves, they get really pissed off. So I learned that in the early stages of it.
Shit, yeah. Damn, better be switched on. Better be tuning in. So that weeds out a lot of people then. So the stage 1, is that on one day?
That unfolded over about a week, and that was all those tests over a number of days. And we got a little bit, we got a bit of sleep, and we got food during that week. And then the middle week is an endurance march, and actually during the first week we do the officer module as well. It's like that for us. I think it was about 48 or 72 hours where they pull the officers aside and they put us through these detailed planning scenarios. Where they give you a really unusual scenario. I think one for us was like, all right, there's been a massive tsunami in the Solomon Islands. We're going to evacuate all these trains there. All the airports are shut. Come up with a plan. These are the assets you've got. You've got a Navy, you've got an Army, you've got a Special Forces team. Like, come up with a plan. And you got 2 hours and you got to come up with a detailed plan. And you got to brief all these SAS commanders on what you're going to do. And they just sit there shaking their head going, this is the worst plan I've ever seen. And you're sitting there going, oh shit, this is a terrible plan. But you got to do your best. You don't have a lot of time. You got to do your best. And it's just having that confidence of saying, yes, it's not a fully formed plan, but in 2 hours, it's the best you can do, right? So that was one thing they did. And they did a few pressure tests. Like they'd walk you in, they call it Circle of Friends. They walk you into a room, and there's every kind of SAS officer in the unit sitting in a like a horseshoe around you. And you sit on your own, and they basically interrogate you for an hour and ask you questions about why you want to join and why you're suitable and what are your strengths. And, they ask about your background. If you've had any charges, they take those apart, and they put you under pressure, and they're looking to see what your resolve is like and what your demeanor under pressure is like. And that was hard. Like, you're only a young guy. Or you look up to all these people because they're basically heroes to you. You've always wanted to do what they're doing. So for me, I knew I was like, I've just got to do my best. Half the shit I do is not going to be good enough, but some of the stuff I do will be really good, and that's what I'm going to remember, right? Like, stick to what you're good at. Don't worry about the things you fail, and just keep going.
Absolutely. Yeah, sticking to your guns.
Self-awareness too.
Yeah, tapping into self-awareness.
Yeah. That sounds like the biggest thing was knowing what you're good at, knowing what you weren't, and just the mindset of keep going anyway.
You can't do it all.
Yeah.
You can't do it all. People who tell you they can are fucking lying. You can do you'll have spikes, right? And you have spikes in your capability. And if they do this at McKinsey and Company, they're like, you've got a distinctive spike in problem solving and analytics. So we're going to use you in those two fields. In Special Forces, it'll be, you've got an extreme spike in, leadership and physical ability here, or endurance. So they're the things you're good at. You need to work on these things. So you're going to have these traits that are favorable to you, and you've got to encourage those, but you've got to shore up your weaknesses at the same time. For me, it was going to be endurance and probably certain aspects of leadership I had to be better at. But no one's perfect. Yeah, you just got to do your best.
What did you struggle most with throughout the selection period?
Probably self-confidence was the biggest thing. Probably believing that you can be good enough to do something is sometimes a big hurdle, because you look at it and you're like, oh, this is only for people that are, X. They're either brilliant athletes, or they're brilliant at this, or they're brilliant at that, and that's not me. So you get that weird imposter thing going.
Yeah. But
it actually can be you. You can be the one that goes to the AFL draft, or you can be the one that becomes a dancer on Broadway or an SAS soldier if you apply yourself, if you believe you can do it and you want to do it enough. it's totally possible. You could be an astronaut if you wanted. There's Navy SEALs that become astronauts. Like, so having that belief and working towards it and not letting the self-talk get in the way is the big one.
Yeah, so important. And then the self-belief, I guess, had paid off, or the dream from 14 of becoming an SAS officer paid off.
Yeah, me and my mate, we stuck it out. We got through the course. I lost 16 kilos in 3 weeks and got to the end of the course. I was covered in strapping tape, like I had cuts all over me. And I sat there and just thought, you know what? I did my best then. So if it's not enough, then I'm okay with that. If I hadn't done my best, or I'd kind of phoned it in a bit, I'd be really pissed off. But I did my best, and then that's all you can do, right? And it was enough. I remember the commanding officer brought us in one at a time, and they'd bring you in, and you go out another door and go wait somewhere else. And I was the last guy. I was literally the last guy of the whole selection course, because my name was W. It was alphabetic. I was the fucking last guy. Yeah. And they brought me in. He's like, how'd you go? And I was telling him. He goes, what'd you do bad? What'd you do good? And he just goes, yeah, we saw a few areas you got to improve. This was not that good, and this was not that good, but we'll take a chance on you. And we want to sign you up. And I was like shocked. I was shocked. I was like, I wasn't prepared for him to say that. And I think, I remember it well. I stood up and I shook their hand. It was the commanding officer and the RSM. And I think they appreciated that it was such a big moment for a soldier, because they think about their own time when they were a aspiring kind of candidate as well. And in that moment, you realize they're good guys. They're just good guys that have done hard work and they're the same as you. And when they look at you, they see a young version of themselves. And from that point on, everyone who was in the SAS was good to me. They're all good people. They're all hard workers and decent guys, and did a great job.
That's awesome. And what did the market 24 or however you old at that point in time, what did he not know about getting deployed and spending 4 deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan? What was he yet to learn?
I think it's funny because I'd done military history as an undergrad, and even my postgrad, I was going to do a year in postgrad history, which was going to be, I was going to do a master's, and my thesis was going to be the psychological combat casualties in Australia's military history going from 1914. And what I didn't know is there would eventually be the war in the Middle East. The unit would be committed there for nearly 10 years, and that I'd be deployed a number of times with them. And eventually have my own, after my first 2, I had my own psychological issues after that. So just having to deal with a war and dealing with the fallout of it, I think you only think about fighting the war. You don't really think about coming home from it and living in society. I didn't think about that second bit because I had no idea what to expect. It wasn't widely known in Australia what that was like. It was really only Vietnam and a few peacekeeping missions before that. So I think dealing with the deployments and trying to reintegrate myself into civilian life was hard.
Damn. Yeah. It sounded, just listening to your book, Survivor in the SAS. I listened to the Audible of that, and phenomenal book, but you could hear how difficult it was immersing yourself back in everyday life, mixing with typical humans.
Yeah. You're not really fit for society because you've lived by a different set of rules. And it's a funny thing because when you're in a war zone, it actually feels a lot more real than Western society, because here we've built all these things that don't really make sense. Well, they make sense, but they don't really, we're not really evolved to deal with them. We're still humans. We evolved to live in groups of 30 in the wild, to fight, protect each other. And then we come to Western society, we live in these family units in houses and we're all safe and there's no danger and you can be a knowledge worker and never do anything physical in your life. We're not actually conditioned to do that. And so that pull between what our roots as a human, which is looking after your tribe, versus coming back to Western civilization where you don't matter anymore, that's hugely dislocating for a soldier. It's very hard to come back to that. You just want to go back to what you were.
Has the longer you've been, well, let's start with this. So like each deployment you would go on and come back, would you feel there was like a further disconnect from what it was like living in normal society? So like it accumulated over each deployment where you'd get more and more disconnected?
Got worse each time.
Yeah.
Yep. Each time it was more a case of, I don't want anything to do with these people. I'd come home and I'd be like, I don't want anything to do with them. I didn't respect ordinary Australians that I lived with because of the lives that they had and because of how lucky they were and how they didn't realise it. And I just wanted to go back to where all my friends were and all my work was, and a place where I mattered a lot more than just being home in Australia.
Have you been able to like get past that feeling like more and more as you've come out of that? So since you have stopped serving in, was it 2011? Has it become easier and easier to reconnect? Yeah.
I have now because it took a while, but eventually I was like, actually, the way to get around it is to do the things that you think matter and work with the people that you think matter. And then all of a sudden you're doing the right thing. And often you can be compensated for that. If you're doing something you really like, looking after the people you like and helping them, then often there's something monetary in that. Like I do keynote speeches about the shit I learned overseas, and now I'm doing online training for based on all the stuff I learned overseas. And I actually care about that. I care about the people I work with in those fields. I get paid to do it. And so all of a sudden, what I'm doing here matters a lot more, and it's actually linked to my previous career. But that took years. It took me years to get to that point.
What's the online training take you through?
So I just target all the things that I think are the fundamentals to kind of self-leadership and team leadership. There's a bunch of things that I think if you think about the leadership training sector, it's so broad, it's so kind of saturated. There's a lot of academics and a lot of books and a lot of garbage out there. But I've just taken the things that I learned through experience, really, and a lot of them are tied to the fundamentals, and I just share what I think are the most important things. If you're a new team leader and you've got no training at all in leadership, I'm like, if I was new again and I was talking to myself as a 20-year-old, I'd be like, just do this when you're a leader. And that's what I put in these courses, just the basics.
Well, if it's something you need, someone else is probably needing it too. Is this available now? Is it coming soon, online course?
Yeah, so I'm doing a foundation round now. I've built the whole infrastructure for it. There's like online software. And I used to do this at McKinsey full time. And so I'm getting a small cohort of people and putting them through the course now. And then once Survivor's open, I'll do a full launch. I'll open it up and send it out to everyone. And I've kind of priced it so that if you're just on your own and you're a new leader and you want to learn something, it's kind of the right price that you can buy that yourself and learn a fair bit, and you'll have access to it forever. So that to me is a great endeavor, because I know it will change lives and it will help people.
That's important.
It is important because it's not just you're a leader now, you tell people what to do. Like there's so much more to it, and I think a lot of people who get to those positions don't recognize that until it's too late. So it's good to have that kind of access to that kind of information out there.
Yep.
And I guess going back to what we were talking about before, your first flight in to Iraq, going through the green zone, I'd love to hear a few war stories, moments under pressure.
There's a few funny ones. I remember I've said it in my book, like the green zone reminded me of a kind of C-grade action movie, which is kind of funny because it shouldn't be a C-grade action movie, but that's what it looked like. If you look at all the characters that were in there, I remember like landing and there was a dude in if you've seen The Matrix, you know they all wear like the trench coats and the dark glasses. And this is 2006, like the Matrix films had only just wrapped up. And I land and there's a dude walking around the green belt wearing walking around the green zone wearing a freaking trench coat, big leather boots,
God.
ponytail, dark sunglasses, M4, and I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Who are you? Why are you dressed like someone from the Matrix? And I saw this other dude that looked like he was about 95 years old getting off an aircraft with a American flag bandana.
Oh shit.
He looked like Randy Savage from the 80s, like an actor, like a wrestling hero that was past his prime. He had body armor on. He had a weapon. It was just like this weird mix of military and just freaks that were touring the battlefield. And it was just like a film. It was like a film because I landed and there were helicopters coming in wings of 6 or 7, landing, offloading troops to a hospital nearby. There were airstrikes going in not far from us. There were tanks, armored cars. There was bombers circling overhead, getting refueled. It was like a full-on war, and just it was like the whole American military machine was in one place. It was pretty cool. It's cool to see, but it was a bit of a waste of effort.
Jesus, far out. And so that was your first deployment over there. When was the moment where you were about to do that river crossing and you thought you had ambushed the opposition? What was the story there?
Yeah, so this is my first tour in Afghanistan, and this was like the end of the year in 2007. It's winter in Afghanistan, so it was fucking freezing. And the nights were quite long, so we were trying to get across the Helmand River into enemy territory in one period of darkness. It's quite hard to do that, so we had it, and you want to do it because the more time you give the enemy, the more time they can prepare. So we left the base at last light, drove all the way to the Helmand River. It took us I think we left at 7 p.m. and got there about 4 a.m. And then we had to spend those last couple of hours of darkness trying to get across the river. We're already in enemy territory, but across the river was real enemy territory. And as we're trying to cross in the dawn, all the enemy could hear us, and they were starting to get their weapons and starting to get together to fight us. And
how do you know they're preparing as well? Is there information coming in?
They didn't have secure communication, so we could hear their communications. We could listen to their walkie-talkies, right? It's like easy. So we could hear what they were saying on their walkie-talkies. They're going like, get the weapons, get ready. Like we're going to go get these guys.
And this is through a translator, I'm guessing?
The translator, yeah. I had a translator in my car, and he'd tell me what they were saying. And I'd be like, dude, what are they saying? And he'd tell me. It's like, they're going to the river, they're going to attack. And I remember getting all the troops up. We had a vehicle down the river. Vehicle was drowned. I was like, fuck, this is a big issue because now we've got to try and recover the vehicle, and it's becoming daylight, and we've got to move the cars back. And the enemy were coming down the river because they could hear the vehicles. They knew we were down there. They couldn't see us, but they were coming down there to find us. We could see the enemy because we had a night vision. And they were in formation. There was like a group of them, big group of about 7. And they were all walking in formation. They all had weapons. And they walked in front of my formation. They weren't that far away. They're probably 200 meters. And I remember saying to my team, like, that's them. And we had a Reaper drone overhead, and they were flagging with an infrared light. They're like shining on them. And I'm like, fuck, that's them. I said to my troops, you got to get the car out of the water because we're going to open up on these guys. And the second we do, there's going to be a huge battle. And he's going, just give us a couple of minutes. And I'm watching him going, they're coming, quick. And he's pulling the car out. And I gave fire control orders to the troop. I'm like, all right, we're going to fire on my command. We're going to fire rockets and heavy weapons and everything all in one hit. And so I gave the order. I'm like, stand by, go. And we all fight at once. And we just fucking rained hell down on these guys. And they were in a group of 7. You really have to shoot a lot. I think people don't realize this. Like, it looks impressive, all explosions and that, but you've actually got to hit people. A near miss is still a miss. Like, I've seen people get hit by bombs and rocket launchers, and it might land a couple of meters away from them, and they'll run away and they're fine. So you've actually got to hit people. And yeah, we like opened up on this group of about 7 guys, and as soon as we did that, the whole tree line fired back at us. There were rockets coming back at us, and
Oh, fuck.
traces in the early morning, and rockets were fired at our cars, and I was like, oh fuck. And I was firing my machine gun back at him. I remember seeing all the traces. It was a real spectacle. We were hammering him, and we pulled back, and basically that was the start of the 2-week battle. And in that area, there were a lot of top Taliban commanders and a few foreign fighters, like Chechens and Pakistanis. And so they were organized and disciplined and super motivated, and they were hard to deal with. We had the whole week we were using heavy American air power. We were using artillery, which is pretty rare in like a insurgent conflict. Like we were using 152 millimeter rounds, which are freaking 30 kilogram rounds. We're firing them into the valley. It was full on.
Wow. How are you sleeping at night?
Like a log. No, I get a couple of hours each night. I might get 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours a night. And I'd have to write reports during the night, and then you get up and you'd be on gun duty and go back to sleep. So you get this really weird sleep, and it fucks with you. Like you're in a dream state, like you're awake, but you're kind of half asleep at the same time. It's really bad for decision making and cognition and just generally leading people. So you got to look after yourself. If you're in that state, you've actually got to try and sleep, because something. This goes back to World War One. Some of the worst decisions that were made on the battlefield happened after generals had gone like 3 days without sleep. They just make real mistakes. So you got to look after yourself.
Is there a way to combat that other than sleeping? I'd heard in the World War II, Germans were having amphetamines to help with cognition and stay awake.
If you have amphetamines, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like you're going to have to, you're going to be in a sleep debt if you do that. So you're going to burn yourself out. So you might as well, in my view, your body will naturally give you the push you need if you're in trouble. Your body's got adrenaline, all those stress hormones that if you're in trouble, your body will find a way to bring you back to life. But if you take medication, amphetamines, you're going to fuck yourself.
So you're just relying on your body to adrenaline systems and to kick in when you needed to.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we were fucked. We were totally burned out and just been no sleep and fighting, and yeah, it changes the way your brain is wired. And neuroscientists have done a bit more research into this. After 3 weeks of being exposed to kind of high threat environments, like life-changing environments, it actually degrades some of the neural pathways in your mind. So it does brain damage, basically. The longer you're under threat, the more your brain just shuts down the things it doesn't need to use and just concentrates on survival. So it does change your brain.
Yeah. I remember listening to you talking about one of your psychologists talking about how your amygdala, the front part of your brain, which is the fight and flight response patterns and system, that pretty much just becomes an overdrive, and which is similar to animals, which is how they live when they can sleep, when they wake up. And the hippocampus, which is the sort of more emotional part of your brain with empathy, that just not shrivels up, but doesn't become a part of decision making and cognition.
Yeah, normally what happens is your amygdala controls fight and flight mechanisms. And generally, like back in the old days, if you saw a crocodile, it'd activate and you'd run away. Now, as a human, if we see a crocodile in a crocodile farm, the more advanced part of our brain regulates the amygdala and says, actually, no, it's not a threat. You don't need to have this fight or flight response. It's under control. It's not a threat. What happens is in wartime is the regulating mechanism of your mind doesn't work as well, and your amygdala takes precedence. So instead of being able to regulate your threat perception, you're not able to, and everything's a threat. You're hyper aroused, and that's what leads to a lot of issues in people.
and I can see how after deployments it just get more difficult to sort of merge back in with regular life. But even still, like, when you're sleeping the 2-3 hours, are you feeling comfortable and safe that your mind can shut off, or are you beyond exhausted that it actually happens in 30 seconds?
No, you sleep, but you're so. I used to sleep on my webbing with my rifle next to me, pointing in the direction of the enemy, because I knew I'd just have to wake up and pick my rifle up and start shooting. So you never sleep properly because you know there's always that threat. But again, I'd sit there and I'd listen. I could always hear a sentry walking. You might hear a sentry walking around the position. You'd hear their boots on the gravel. And for 6 months after I came back, because I couldn't hear that at night, I didn't sleep properly because I didn't have someone near me looking over me.
Wow. How do you... Is there... This is going to sound so dumb, but like rainforest noises or something like that you can sort of play on your phone in the background noise to ease that part?
Yeah, there would be. But I think I used to do a sleep routine where I'd like off-ramp myself from the day. I'd have like a 20-30 minute routine where I'd just kind of have a shower and stretch and do breathing exercise and try and relax a bit, and that helped quite a lot.
Interesting, yeah. That makes sense. Prepare yourself and the pattern. You talked about a routine as well before, sort of calming yourself in times of chaos. That seemed to be a theme. And that there would be a checklist that you'd run through in your mind to confirm to yourself that you've got everything, you're ready for the day. I guess similar to that.
Pretty much, yeah. Just having that checklist of things that you step through. And it just means you can control yourself when everything else around you don't have control over.
What was the most difficult deployment that you'd went on?
It was probably that first one. Because the that was the first time I'd been exposed to combat. I was fairly young. We had a fatality. We had a bunch of injuries. So it was a pretty hard deployment. A lot of combat. And then I think after I'd been through that and I survived that, I got better and better at leadership and at the combat side. And so getting through that first hurdle of, yeah, it was hard, but you can survive it and you can learn from it. Getting through that and getting myself kind of back on the horse and redeploying was a good thing. And I was proud of how I did in the later years of coming back from those deployments, for sure.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah. How do you feel that, like, I guess the regular people, and I'm one of them, that have so little understanding of what's going on, and you're putting in such a like valiant effort overseas, and it maybe isn't being recognized like it should be?
I think that tells you a lot about the war you're fighting. I think if it was an important war, people would care about it. I think if it wasn't an important war, people wouldn't fucking know about it and wouldn't give a shit about it, and that was Afghanistan. It wasn't important to Australia. It wasn't important to our national interests, at least in the later stages. So no one really knew about it. No one really cared about it.
And is that ultimately why you decided to step out? Part of the reason.
It wasn't that on its own. It was also a sense of like I'd accomplished what I went there to do, which was to lead troops in war. And I was so proud of that. And I knew it was like that fork in the road. You're like, I can keep going this career and I'll go further up the chain. That'll be cool. But you're still a public servant. And I think in my last tour in Afghanistan, I saw General Petraeus get sacked by Obama when it was 2010 and all that shit came out about the Rolling Stone article. He was fired. He was the lead general in Afghanistan. He was fired by President Obama. And I was like, holy shit, you can commit your whole career to this. You can do 40 years, be the best soldier in the world, and you can get sacked at the top of your career. Yeah, like that. And I just had this feeling of like, you're actually still not in control. You're still, you're still a public servant. And so I think the good thing about now is I don't answer to anyone. I run my own show. I'm accountable only to my family, and I don't have a boss. And that to me is worth a lot because I can just do what I think matters. I'm not on someone else's time or on someone else's clock. I'm just doing my own thing.
So important. The sense of control as well.
Control. I'll never put my destiny in the hands of another man.
That's cool.
Not anymore. Yeah.
That's cool to hear that. What changed that? A lot of people like to be in control or have other people in control of them because it's just easier for them.
Yeah, it's an illusion of control. It comes with, and this is it's one of the great tricks with employment is you think you're safe because you're like, I've got a steady job, I've got this company, I'm important to this company, I matter. But in fact, you don't matter as much as the company making a profit or getting in the way of any fiduciary responsibility the company has. If it comes to that, you'll be the one that gives. It won't be the company that keeps you. Whereas when you run your own show, it's very different. You're super important.
Of course.
And I think it took me a little while to realize this. I'm like, actually, I'm like, you've got to now back yourself. And it is easier if you've got a partner, but you can do it. You can do it anytime. Get yourself a mentor. Figure out what it is you really want to do and just keep chipping away at it. And don't give up your day job. Have a day job and do it on the side until you get really good at it and then jump across.
The kill capture, how's that going? Because, the jackets look fucking awesome. But they're out of my price range. How do you go about finding the right customers to target?
Yeah, it's a good one. So what I did was I deliberately made the stuff really high quality. It's all made in New York City. I priced it right up there, which is, I think, the right way to go. And the reason I do that is because it carves a segment out. And there's a bunch of aspirational people that want to get it. And then there's a bunch of people that can afford it. And those two interplays kind of work together. And in the last 2 years, we've seen a lot of people have had disposable income. They're at home. They're not shopping as much. They're saving their money. They're not traveling. So people have been ordering discretionary items like jackets. We're a digitally native company. So we've actually at the point now, I never hold inventory, right? Because holding inventory, generally a bad idea. It generally results in inventory shrink and cash burn. So I don't do it. But now we're at the point where I having to hold a bit of inventory because we've got orders coming all the time. And it just helps with speed. Yeah, if you're shipping stuff out. So it's been a lot of fun. We're going to keep growing it. And we're hoping to get an acquisition at some point.
Fuck yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yep.
The big payout. And you're currently competing in Survivor. Second season, a second attempt. I don't know what you'd call it. Second dig.
Second season on Survivor. I went back with my wife. Met her on the first season in 2017. I got asked back a second time to play as a husband and wife team. We're halfway through this season. It's been brutal. It was utterly ruthless. It was 40-degree temperatures, tough players. It was a really hard game. So it's been good watching it back. It's been hectic, obviously, just being involved in a TV show, but it's so much fun. It's just a bit of entertainment. I don't take it too seriously, but
we're wrapping up here at the moment. But we put out a thing on Instagram. If anyone had any questions, we've got a question from Mason. He's asked, what was it? 1 second. He asked, favorite moment while deployed?
Oh, good question. Probably my favorite moment was landing in Afghanistan for the first time. We landed on a dirt airstrip and getting out and seeing the mountains around us, and the sun was kind of setting. It was hitting all the mountains, and I've never seen a place like it. And there was helicopters flying and dust everywhere and motorbikes and guys with weapons. It was a cool. It felt like a Tatooine, in Star Wars. It was fucking a childhood dream. It was awesome.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So cool. Mark, it's been so awesome chatting to you, hearing about your journey, and thank you for your service. Incredible story. Your book, Survivor, Life in the SAS, you can listen on Audible, like me, because you can't read, or you can buy the book if you're more intellectual. Your online course, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Shout out yourself.
Yeah, book you can find in most major outlets on Amazon and Big W and Dimmicks and all those places, and on Audible, of course, if you like an audiobook. And then the course, if you go to mark.courses/enlist, you will head straight to the online leadership course. So check it out.
Awesome. Instagram, socials, if anyone wants to follow your journey.
Oh, yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. On Instagram, I'm at mark.a.wales. So jump in and check it out. DM me and say hello.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. Great to chat to you.
Thanks, guys. Love what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks
Take
very
care.
much.